Today we'll be analyzing Requiem from the musical Dear Evan Hansen. In the musical, a teenage boy, Connor, commits suicide. Afterwards, his sister, mother, and father mourn his death by singing this Requiem. You might expect that a song about the death of a loved one would be very sad, but Connor wasn't exactly loved by his family. As you'll see in a lot of the lyrics, Connor wasn't a good kid towards his sister or his parents. This family dynamic, compounded with his suicide, is what makes this song so emotionally complex and worthy of analysis. So before we start, please listen to this song if you haven't already. Let's look at a score for the piece. First, consider the overall structure of the song. The song begins with a soft, sad Section A sung solely by Connor's sister Zoe. Section B, melodically, is pretty much a repeat of Section A, but this time all three characters sing, and the dynamics and harmony are much more intense. Then we have a bridge, Section C, before we go back to the style of Section A and Section D, a soft, quiet mood, and that's how the song ends. We'll come back to the significance of this overall structure at the end, but let's first analyze the climax of this piece, which is in Section B. Section B begins with a repeated phrase, the first time sung by Connor's father Larry, and the second time sung by Connor's mother Cynthia. These two phrases are actually a repeat of what Zoe sang at the start of Section A. This repeated melody enforces the idea that Zoe's feelings in the first section are echoed by Larry and Cynthia. After this, tension starts building. We can listen to that here. I say I'll keep you with me? Where should I go and fall apart for you? For the first time in this song, we have two voices singing at once. This fact alone heightens the emotion at this part. We also see that these four measures are kind of like a parallel period. The first and third measures are basically the same, and the second and fourth measures are different, with the fourth measure ending with a cadence. Let's look at the chord structure of this phrase. We're in C-sharp minor. Looking at this first chord here, we see a 4/7 chord, which then changes to a 2 diminished 6 chord. These subdominant chords then briefly resolve to tonic before immediately going back to a subdominant 6 chord in the next measure. This next measure is subdominant throughout, with a 2 diminished triad at the end. The following measure has the same 4/7 to tonic as we saw in the first. So these three measures up to this point have the same tension building feeling that arises from all these subdominant chords. This, compounded with the similar rhythm and lyrics of these three measures, gives us the steady rise in tension we feel. When we get to the fourth measure, the melody sits at a half cadence for the entire measure, like the tension has built to a maximum and is pausing briefly before it erupts. We can anticipate this cadence coming when we look at the last beat of the previous measure, and we see quite a few Bs, making this like a 1/7 chord, which is not really a tonic chord. And in the cadential measure, we see that the bass is playing B throughout, sustaining the tension. So what chord is this cadence made of? If we analyze in the key of C-sharp minor, it seems like a major 7 chord since the leading tone B isn't raised. That usually isn't what a half cadence is made of, so let's analyze this in the relative major, E major. As we'll see later, this makes sense because the song modulates the E major right after this cadence. So in E major, this is the 5 chord. Ah, that's right in making this a half cadence. The rest of this measure, after the half cadence, has to lead to the eruption of the tension we've built in the previous three measures. This transition needs to be dramatic, so you see the composer does a variety of things here. The harmony is playing in octaves, the upper notes of the harmony are getting higher and higher, approaching the B in the melody in the next measure, the tempo is increasing, and there's a crescendo. Let's listen to this. So this whole thing leads to the climax of the song. The previous phrases had fast rhythms where the characters were asking, why should I, why should I, why should I? And now the rhythm suddenly becomes very sustained, the vocals have a whole note, and all three characters are singing together for the first time. This really conveys the feeling that the characters have finally taken a stance and decided they've had enough. As we said before, this is in E major, which helps this part feel more bold than the previous part in minor. Looking at the chord structure, we can see the tonic right here. In fact, the one chord is sustained throughout these two measures. Now, even though this is a tonic, it doesn't feel as stable as you'd expect a tonic to be. And this is because you can see the composer included some non-chord tones in the harmony, these Ds and Fs that are notes borrowed from the 5 chord. Let's listen to how these non-chord tones make the harmony sound less stable. So if we remove these Ds and Fs, the harmony would sound something like this, which sounds fairly stable, right? But if we include these Ds and Fs, it sounds like this, which sounds much more unstable. The next two measures have exactly the same melody as these previous two measures. The harmony is also very, very similar, except the bass has switched from the 1 chord to the 5 chord. So the differences between these two measures and the previous two measures are subtle when you're listening to it, but the switch from tonic to dominant harmony makes us feel that these two measures are a bit more emotional than the previous two. After these two measures of dominant chords, we'd expect the song to come to a tonic. Looking at this chord, we see it's a C-sharp minor triad, so we could say that the piece modulates back to C-sharp minor, and this is a 1 chord. But a 1 chord is supposed to be stable, yet this chord feels the least stable of all the chords so far, ever since the start of the climax. Let's listen from the beginning of the climax. So instead, let's stick with E major and look at this as a 6th chord, kind of like a deceptive cadence. You also see a lot of Bs here, making this like a 6-7 chord, which is even more unstable. In the following measure, the bass changes to a 4 chord, which you can also see in the vocals. Finally, these subdominant harmonies go to a dominant 5 chord, relieving the tension in the previous two measures and getting us to the end of section B. So now that we've looked closely at section B, let's step back and take a look at the whole song again, in particular how it's able to convey Zoe, Larry, and Cynthia's conflicted feelings of sadness and anger in the wake of Connor's death. At the beginning, we have one character singing, all the voices are pretty quiet, and the harmony is fairly sparse. This is like how when the characters first find out about Connor's death, they try to rationalize their anger and loss. Then in the middle, the voices build up, the harmony becomes richer, the dynamics become louder, and the characters let out their anger and indignance. Finally, at the end, we are back at a soft dynamic, one character singing, and a sparse harmony. This shows how the characters finally come to accept their reality. Overall, this Requiem really adeptly conveys the complex emotions of the characters in this situation through a lot of different devices, like the chord structure, voicing, repetition, rhythm, and dynamics. I hope you can see this song in a new light when you listen to it again.
Why should I play this game of pretend? Remembering through a second-hand sorrow, such a great son and wonderful friend. Oh, don't the tears just pour? I could curl up and hide in my room, there in my bed still sobbing tomorrow. I could give in to all of the gloom, but tell me what for? a heavy heart? Why should I start to break in pieces? Why should I go and fall apart for you? Why should I play the grieving girl and lie, saying that I miss you and that my world has gone dark without your light? I will sing no requiem tonight.
I gave you the world, you threw it away, leaving these broken pieces behind you. Everything wasted, nothing to say, so I can sing no requiem.
I hear your voice and feel you near. Within these words I finally find you. And now that I know that you are still here, I will sing no requiem tonight. Why should I have a heavy heart? Why should I say I'll keep you with me? Why should I go and fall apart for you? That I knew, 'cause I cannot play the grieving girl and lie, saying that I miss you and that my world has gone dark.
I will sing no requiem